Hello everyone, my name is Lisa Smith. I'm the Immunology Lead Nurse at Southmead Hospital in Bristol. I'm here with my colleague Dr Mark Gompels, Consultant Immunologist also at Bristol, and we have been asked to talk to you today about the importance of clinical research in hereditary angioedema. So Dr Gompels, why is research important in HAE?
Research is important for hereditary angioedema because it's a very rare condition. And because it's a rare condition, it's very hard to get the patient numbers. So in order to do that, we have to have international cooperation as well as national cooperation. And this is the only way that we can do trials which are meaningful for patients. It's important for patients because there's a big interest in pharmaceutical companies for new drugs. And this is great because when you think about where we were 20 years ago and where we are now, we have so much more choice for patients. There's very much more possibility of patients having normal lives and doing things that before they couldn't even have done, like being professional sports people. It's also important that we need research for other things, such as quality of life and how best to use our new treatments. So this is really why research is important for hereditary angioedema.
How do you think that taking part in research will benefit our patients?
Research will benefit patients individually because if you are taking part in research, it's highly likely that you'll have immediate access to the drugs which have just been developed. So they won't be available through the NHS. So it will benefit you personally directly in that you can have these drugs available. Of course, some people in research will be on a placebo arm, which means they don't take an active drug, but then other people will be on the active drug arm. Most well-designed trials allow patients who've taken part in the research to go onto the active drug for a period of time until licensing is available. So research will benefit you in that you will get access to these, and which is particularly helpful if you don't have good control of your condition. On a more national and international scale, research will benefit you in the sense that it will benefit you and your family, because if you take part in research, drugs can be developed, and these can benefit all the patients with hereditary angioedema.
Apart from drug trials, are there any other types of research in HAE?
It's a good question to ask whether there's any research apart from into the drugs that people can take to help treat their condition, and the answer is yes. But there's a lack of those, and they certainly need to be done more. There's a lot of interest in quality of life studies. Quality of life is really poorly understood. We need to know what helps people, why it helps them, and how best to plan for people so that we can best use the treatments that we do have. And unless we understand what an impact a condition has on someone's life, then we can't really best design quality of life studies or best how to treat people with their new treatments. I think also there's a lot of interest in genetic research. We now can understand more why genes have a certain role and how they act. And if we can do this, then we can work out how better to control these genes. And some of the more recent research is about controlling genes as opposed to drugs which treatment. This may sound slightly scary, but actually it's a very clever way of making sure that you get the best treatment with the least side effects. At least we hope so, but the trials aren't yet complete.
Do you think it's safe for our patients to take part in research?
It is safe to do research on the whole. I've done research for the last 25 years and I've been very impressed. The first thing is that every trial that comes up for a research consideration has to go through an ethics committee. An ethics committee isn't just composed of doctors, it also has lay members and other people who have expertise in the area. So they will review a trial to make sure that any trial has got sound principles and is soundly done. In addition to the ethics committee, there's also often a data monitoring committee so that the people who are taking part in the trials will have all their data monitored over a period of time. And this is particularly the case for safety, where all the adverse events are checked so that any safety signal can be picked up very early on. So I think that really there is a very good safety record for trials. And if you think about the number of trials in the country that go on at any one time and the actual problems that they have, they're very few and far between. We can remember them, and they were a number of years ago. I remember when I was starting out in HAE trials, we wanted to recruit people for a trial to icatibant. The very same week that we started and were open for the trials, we had a trial in London which had a terrible safety record when some people nearly died, but fortunately didn't. As a result of that, most patients were more cautious about entering into the trial, and at that time we didn't get many recruited into that trial because in part of this reason, in part because the timescales were tight. So I think that it's fair to say that there are some problems with drugs and they can cause problems, but most of these are picked up through a relatively safe process early on.
Will the patients be compensated for taking part in the research?
Compensation in research is an interesting question. It's not entirely fair to pay people a lot of money to take part in research, because if you charge or if you give a lot of money, then it's almost an inducement to take part. So they tend to pay expenses only, but some studies do pay a small remuneration to allow for the time an individual has taken out of their work or their other life, because obviously it does cost you and it is a personal sacrifice. But on the whole, most research in the UK doesn't come with this other than a compensation for bus fares, train fares, missed meals, etc. As a nurse, what is your involvement with the patients doing research?
So the nursing team here at Southmead has been involved with research for a number of years now, and we generally work very closely with the research team. So I think that we can offer the clinical expertise about the condition, and the research team are able to guide us very carefully and make sure that we follow the protocols. But on the whole, most of the work is carried out by the immunology nursing team. We find that there is huge attention to detail, which again the research team help us out with, but that is completely necessary in the trials that we're doing.
And as a nurse, what do you find the benefits are for a patient?
So the benefit to patients, when I first started working in immunology, probably 15 years ago now, there were very limited treatment options for people with HAE. We pretty much only had C1 inhibitor, which wasn't really licensed for home therapy, tranexamic acid and anabolic steroids. But over the last 10 years, there's lots of treatment options, and that's been entirely down to drug trials and lots of research. And I think the benefit to the patients is it will enable them to take more control of their condition. And it's exciting to be part of something new. It will mean extra visits to hospital, but those are usually reimbursed. And patients are possibly going to get access to drugs that aren't yet available to everyone else. And as we've already spoken about, it's relatively safe. We can't eliminate all risks, but the protocols are usually designed very carefully to make sure it's as safe as possible to the patient. And I think that participating in research enables the patient to help themselves and possibly their families, and certainly for future generations of patients to come.
I'd like to thank everyone for listening to us, and I hope you found this presentation useful. Thank you.